Space bled into shades of crimson and black as Captain Mara Jensen peered out of the command deck's panoramic windows. Her heart thumped rhythmically against her ribcage, mirroring the pulsing alert lights that bathed the UHC defense ship in urgent hues of red. Ahead, the void was disturbed by the sleek, predatory forms of Zoltraxian scouts, slithering through the cosmos towards Cygnus Prime. Every muscle in Mara's body tensed, readiness coursing through her veins. This was more than a mere skirmish on the boundary of human territory. It was a clarion call that war was on their doorstep. As the enemy ships drew closer, the stark silence of space was paradoxically loud, filled with the tacit dread of impending conflict. Mara's crew was a tapestry of focus and fear, each member aware that the survival of their colony hinged on the outcome of this encounter. Positions. Mara's voice cut through the tense air, authoritative yet calm. Her eyes, a striking shade of steel blue, swept over her crew, instilling a silent strength as they scrambled to their battle stations. The command deck buzzed with activity. Radar screens blinked with the approaching enemy, and the low hum of the ship's engines deepened in anticipation. Outside, the cosmos danced with the eerie glow of distant stars, a stark backdrop to the violence that was about to unfold. Mara's hand hovered over the weapons console, her fingers brushing over cold, impersonal buttons that held the power to unleash devastating firepower. "Steady," she whispered, more to herself than to her crew. Her gaze locked onto the leading Zoltraxian scout, its hull gleaming like a dark gem against the void. With a sharp intake of breath, she pressed the launch button. Missiles streaked through space, tracing a line of fiery determination towards the enemy. The impact was immediate and brilliant. Explosions blossomed in the void, silent but vivid, painting sudden bursts of orange and yellow against the black canvas of space. Mara felt a brief surge of triumph, but it was quickly doused by the relentless advance of more Zoltraxian ships. They came in waves, unyielding, each explosion bringing them closer to Cygnus Prime. "Evasive maneuvers," Mara commanded, her voice a beacon in the chaos. The ship lurched beneath her, diving and weaving through the onslaught of enemy fire. Each move was a calculated dance of death and survival, choreographed by Mara's seasoned instincts. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Harrow, relayed targeting data with a calm that belied his racing pulse. Together they orchestrated a defense that was as desperate as it was daring. Each blast from their cannons was a defiance of the grim odds, each maneuver a testament to their determination to protect their home. As the battle raged, Mara's mind was a whirlwind of strategy and concern. She thought of the faces of the people on Cygnus Prime, of the children who knew the stars as their playground. She fought for them, for their future, unleashing her fury and fear in every command, every decision that held back the dark tide of the Zoltraxians. The skirmish ended as abruptly as it had begun, with the final Zoltraxian scout retreating into the depths of space, trailing debris and the echoes of defeat. Mara's crew erupted into a cacophony of relief and victory, but the captain's eyes remained fixed on the stars. This was but the first echo of a war drum that would call her to deeper battles, each one a step defending humanity's place among the stars. Back at the command center on Cygnus Prime, the air was thick with the metallic scent of technology and the undercurrent of brewing coffee, a stark contrast to the sterile chill of space. Captain Mara Jensen stood before a large holographic map of the sector, her eyes tracing the constellation of potential Zoltraxian attack vectors with a practiced gaze. Around her, the room hummed with the low chatter of analysts and the soft clatter of keyboards, a hive of activity aimed at fortifying the mining colony against the storm on the horizon. "Mara, you need to see this," Lieutenant Harrow called out, beckoning her over to a side console where new data streamed in real time. The images on the screen were grainy, but the threat they represented was clear. A Zoltraxian armada was amassing just beyond their early warning network, their ships aligning like sharks sensing blood in the water. Mara's jaw set firmly, her resolve hardening with each flickering image. "How long do we have?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the coil of tension winding tighter in her gut. "Best estimate, less than 48 hours, Harrow replied, his eyes not leaving the screen as he adjusted the parameters to refine the data. The room fell silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling over the crew like a heavy cloak. The next hours were a blur of activity. Mara coordinated with her command team, laying out a strategy to reinforce their defenses and evacuate the non-essential personnel to underground shelters. Engineers were summoned to rig makeshift barriers and deploy additional drone scouts to monitor the enemy's movements. Every resource at their disposal was mobilized with military precision, transforming the sleepy mining outpost into a fortified bastion. As night fell on Cygnus Prime, Mara took a moment to step outside into the cool, crisp air of the colony. The stars twinkled indifferently above her, a stark reminder of the universe's vastness and her own fleeting presence within it. She watched as families said their hurried goodbyes, children clutching toys and mothers shouldering bags filled with hastily packed essentials. Mara felt each goodbye like a weight in her chest, her duty to these people anchoring her resolve. Later in the war room, Mara met with her senior advisors. The walls were lined with screens displaying tactical simulations and intelligence reports, the room a nerve center of the impending defense. "We've got one shot at this," she began, her voice cutting through the murmurs of conversation. "The Zoltraxians think we're soft targets, easy pickings at the edge of human space. We're going to show them exactly how wrong they are." The plan was daring. Utilizing the colony's mining explosives, they would create a series of traps in the asteroid belt surrounding Cygnus Prime. If timed perfectly, they could disable a significant portion of the Zoltraxian fleet as they navigated through the narrow channels between the rocks. "We need precision and timing on our side," Mara explained as she outlined the phases of the operation. "Each team will have specific roles. Navigation, you'll guide them in. Engineering, you're on modifications and deployment. Combat teams, you're the backbone of this operation. Nothing happens without your go." The meeting stretched into the early hours, each detail scrutinized and refined. As her crew dispersed to their assignments, Mara remained behind, her eyes once more drawn to the holographic map. The blinking lights represented lives, hundreds of them, and she whispered a silent vow to protect them at all costs. She turned to leave, pausing to glance at a picture tacked to the wall, a younger version of herself with her father, both in pilot uniforms, smiling after her first successful flight. The memory of his words echoed in her mind. "Make me proud, Mara." With a determined nod, she stepped back into the fray, ready to face whatever the Zoltraxians brought with them. As the first signs of dawn touched the sky, the colony was a fortress, braced for battle. Mara stood watching the horizon, the early light glinting off her eyes, which held a fierce promise. Cygnus Prime would endure. Dawn broke over Cygnus Prime with a deceptive calm, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink soft colors belying the harshness of the impending battle. Captain Mara Jensen stood on the observation deck of the command center, watching the horizon as the first light of day mingled with the distant, ominous glimmer of Zoltraxian ships. Her silhouette was a steadfast statue against the vast glass, a lone guardian between her people and the darkness creeping towards them. The command center was a hive of tense activity, with officers moving swiftly and voices kept to urgent, hushed tones. Screens lined the walls, showing streams of data and live feeds from drones positioned in the asteroid belt, a digital front line awaiting the enemy's approach. "Contact in T-30 seconds. Lieutenant Harrow announced, his voice a controlled calm that belied the rapid tapping of his fingers on the console. Mara turned from the window, her gaze sweeping across her team, each member poised at their station, the air thick with anticipation and resolve. As the countdown whispered to 0, the first Zoltraxian ships emerged from the shadow of a nearby moon, sleek and predatory, gliding through space with an eerie grace. Mara's command snapped into the air. "Deploy the first wave of mines. Target their lead ships." The response was immediate. Buttons were pressed, and the silent void of space was momentarily illuminated by the explosions of the mines laid out in the asteroid belt. Bright flares of light and energy erupted, the impact sending shockwaves through the Zoltraxian formation. Several enemy ships careened off course, their shields flickering under the onslaught. Direct hits on targets 1 through 5. Enemy shields at 60%, reported a young ensign, his voice tinged with both awe and fear. Mara nodded, her expression steely. Prepare the second wave. Engineering, stand by to activate the pulse emitters on my mark. The battle escalated quickly. Zoltraxian fighters, agile and deadly, swooped into the fray, their lasers cutting bright lines across the dark canvas of the universe. Mara watched the battle unfold, her mind racing through tactics and countermeasures, each decision a gambit played against the cold intellect of the Zoltraxian commanders. Captain, they're adapting quicker than we anticipated, Harrow warned, his eyes locked on the shifting patterns of the enemy fleet. Switch to manual. Bring the railguns online. Target their flanks. Don't let them regroup, Mara commanded, her voice cutting through the din of alerts and status updates. The command center crew adjusted their strategies, the staccato of keystrokes a rapid-fire accompaniment to the ongoing space ballet of fire and evasion. Outside, the space around Cygnus Prime became a deadly dance floor of flashing lasers, exploding mines, and weaving spacecraft. Each explosion was a drumbeat to the symphony of war, each maneuver a note in the saga of survival. Mara's focus was absolute, her commands precise, as she orchestrated the defense with the expertise of a seasoned conductor. The Zoltraxians were relentless, but the humans of Cygnus Prime were resolute, fighting with a ferocity born of desperation and the raw will to survive. Captain, pulse emitters are charged and ready, announced the chief engineer, his voice a calm constant amid chaos. Now, Mara shouted. The room held its collective breath as the pulse emitters deployed, sending a wave of electromagnetic energy surging through space. The wave hit the advancing Zoltraxian ships like a tsunami, their shields flickering out, leaving them vulnerable. Fire all cannons, target those without shields. Mara's command was a thunderclap, galvanizing her crew into a frenzied yet focused burst of activity. The cannons of Cygnus Prime roared to life, and the Zoltraxian ships caught in the pulse were torn apart by precise, devastating fire. As the smoke of battle cleared, the remnants of the Zoltraxian vanguard drifted like broken ghosts against the stars. Mara stood amidst her crew, their faces lit by the soft glow of screens and the harsher light of victory and loss. They had won for now, but the cost was written in the weary lines of their faces and the solemn reports of casualties filtering in. Mara turned back to the window, her gaze lifting to the stars above. The battle was over, but the war was just beginning. She knew the Zoltraxians would return, and she would be ready. She had to be, for her people, for Cygnus Prime, for humanity. The aftermath of the battle draped Cygnus Prime in a somber cloak. As the last echoes of cannon fire faded into the cold expanse of space, the people of the mining colony gathered to count their losses and fortify their spirits for the battles yet to come. Captain Mara Jensen walked among her crew and the colonists, her presence a reassuring beacon amidst the whirlwind of recovery efforts. The command center, usually a nexus of crisp orders and focused energy, had transformed overnight into a quiet zone of reflection and strategic recalibration. Mara, with her uniform slightly less immaculate than usual, stood at the center of the room reviewing the damage reports and casualty lists that scrolled endlessly down the holoscreens. Outside, the sun of Cygnus Prime dipped towards the horizon, casting long shadows over the modular buildings and protective barriers that made up the colony. The golden light caught on the jagged edges of newly installed defense turrets, turning them momentarily into sculptures of fire. Mara stepped out into the cool evening, the scent of ionized air and scorched metal filling her senses. She walked towards the residential sector, where families of the miners and support staff had created a makeshift memorial for those lost. Small, glowing orbs floated gently above the ground, each one representing a life. Mara stopped at the edge of the gathering, her eyes tracing the soft luminescence of the orbs as they bobbed in the gentle breeze. "Captain Jensen," a voice called out. Mara turned to find Dr. Eliana Reyes, the colony's chief medical officer, approaching her with a tired but determined stride. We've finished the initial triage. The wounded are stable, but supplies are running low. We need to prepare for the possibility of another attack. Mara nodded, her face set in grim determination. Thank you, Eliana. Let's ensure we reroute additional resources to medical. I'll speak with logistics personally. Returning to the command center, Mara convened a meeting with her senior staff. The walls of the war room were lined with digital maps and status updates, flickering in the dim light as night fully descended outside. We've held them off for now. But we were lucky. Mara started, her voice echoing slightly in the hushed room. The Zoltraxians underestimated us, and that gave us an edge. They won't make the same mistake twice. Lieutenant Harrow nodded, his eyes heavy with fatigue but sharp with focus. We've captured some of their tech. It's unlike anything we've seen: advanced propulsion, weaponry. If we can reverse engineer it, we might just level the playing field. Mara considered this, her mind racing through the possibilities. Do it. Prioritize this above all else. I want updates every hour. The night deepened, and Mara found herself alone in the command center, staring out into the starlit void. Her thoughts drifted to the crew and colonists, to the delicate balance of hope and despair that held her community together. She turned away from the window and approached a secluded corner of the room where a small, unassuming console sat. It was a direct line to UHC command, her link to request reinforcements or, if it came to it, an evacuation. Her hand hovered over the console, the weight of command heavier than ever. With a slow exhale, she pressed the communication button, her voice steady as she relayed the situation. This is Captain Jensen of Cygnus Prime. We have repelled the initial Zoltraxian assault, but anticipate further engagements, requesting additional support and authorization to utilize advanced countermeasures. The reply was crackled and distant, a stark reminder of the vastness that separated her from her superiors. Understood, Captain. Support is limited. Reinforcements are days away. Authorization granted for all necessary countermeasures. Hold Cygnus Prime, Captain. Help is coming. As the transmission ended, Mara stood alone in the silence that followed, her resolve like steel. The quiet before the storm was ending, and she would meet the coming chaos head-on, her spirit unbroken, her will unyielded. The pale light of dawn crept over Cygnus Prime, casting long shadows across the scarred landscape of the mining colony, now transformed into a fortress bristling with defenses. In the pre-dawn quiet, Captain Mara Jensen stood atop the command center, her gaze sweeping over the horizon where the darkness of space met the gray of the rocky terrain. Her silhouette was etched sharply against the lightning sky, a sentinel watching for the storm she knew was brewing beyond the stars. Inside the war room, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The walls were alive with the flicker of monitors and the hum of machinery, a stark contrast to the eerie silence that enveloped the colony outside. Mara stepped back inside, her boots echoing softly on the metal floor as she moved to the central table where her command team was assembled. Lieutenant Harrow, report, Mara commanded, her voice cutting through the quiet tension. The Zoltraxian fleet is regrouping faster than we anticipated, Harrow replied, his eyes locked on the live feed displaying the enemy's movements. Their next strike could come at any moment. Mara nodded, her expression unreadable. And the countermeasures? We've integrated the Zoltraxian technology into our systems, an engineer chimed in, her voice a mixture of fatigue and fierce pride. The new shields and weapons are operational. This will give us an edge, but it's hard to predict by how much. Good, Mara responded crisply. Prepare all units for deployment. This will be a full-scale engagement. We strike with everything we have. The command room sprang into action, officers relaying orders as Mara turned to look at the digital map hovering above the table. It showed their little world, a beacon of human life on the fringe of known space, and the approaching shadow of the Zoltraxian fleet, a shadow she was determined to dispel. As the sun rose fully over the colony, The silence was shattered by the roar of engines. Mara watched from the command center as squadrons of their newly enhanced fighters lifted off, their hulls gleaming under the harsh sunlight. Each pilot knew the gravity of their mission, and as they ascended into the battle-scarred skies, there was a palpable sense of resolve that pulsed through the air. The ground shook beneath Mara's feet as the colony's main cannons fired, sending devastating payloads towards the enemy. Above, the sky was lit with the brilliant flashes of combat, the fighters weaving through the chaos, their movements fluid and deadly thanks to the Zoltraxian enhancements. In the war room, Mara and her team monitored the battle with bated breath. Each explosion on the screen was a heartbeat, each report a breath drawn tight with anxiety. The Zoltraxians were relentless, but the human defenders of Cygnus Prime met them with equal ferocity, their enhanced weapons carving through the enemy lines. "Captain, the Zoltraxian flagship is advancing," Harrow reported, his voice tense. Mara's eyes narrowed. "Target the flagship. All units, concentrate fire. This ends now." The command rippled through the ranks like a wave. In space, the human fighters regrouped, forming a spearhead aimed directly at the heart of the Zoltraxian armada. With precision born of desperate courage, they struck. The flagship, caught in the focus of the human assault, faltered under the intense barrage. On the ground, Mara felt a moment of profound silence, as the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the confirmation came through. The Zoltraxian flagship was down. Cheers broke out around her, a tumultuous wave of relief and triumph. But Mara remained focused. "Maintain pressure. Secure all sectors. This battle isn't over until we have complete control." Hours later, as the dust settled and the last of the enemy was driven from their skies, Mara finally allowed herself a moment of respite. The victory was not without cost, but they had achieved the impossible. Cygnus Prime had held, stronger and more defiant than ever. As the sun set, casting fiery hues across a sky marked by the scars of battle, Mara knew this victory was but a moment in the greater tapestry of war. But it was a moment that spoke of hope, of the indomitable human spirit that would not yield, not to the vastness of space, nor the darkness of their foes. As the dust of battle settled over Cygnus Prime, the mining colony, now scarred and fortified, bore the proud marks of a survivor. The late afternoon sun cast long, stark shadows across the debris-strewn landscape, the remnants of Zoltraxian craft melding with the craggy rocks of the planet's surface. Amidst this backdrop of desolation and victory, Captain Mara Jensen stood overlooking the vista from her command center's viewing deck, her silhouette a steadfast guardian against the dimming light. The air inside the command center was thick with a mix of relief and lingering tension. The crew, though exhausted, moved with a buoyant step, their faces illuminated by the glow of screens that no longer flashed the red of imminent threat, but the steady blue of systems returning to normal. Mara entered the room, her presence commanding immediate attention despite her fatigue-etched features. "Report," she said, her voice resonant in the suddenly hushed space. Lieutenant Harrow, who had been overseeing the recovery operations, stepped forward, a digital tablet in hand. "The last of the Zoltraxian forces have retreated, Captain. Our defenses held strong. Losses are significant, but less than projected, thanks to the new tech integrations." Mara nodded solemnly, her eyes briefly closing as she absorbed the weight of those lost and the relief of those saved. "And the colony? Structural repairs are underway," Harrow continued. "Power and life support are stable. We're also receiving aid offers from nearby colonies and Earth Command." "Good," Mara responded, allowing herself a momentary smile. "Set up communication links. I want to personally thank them and ensure our needs are met promptly." As the crew dispersed to carry out her orders, Mara turned to the large windows, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon, its fading light painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The beauty of it starkly contrasted with the day's chaos, a poignant reminder of the peace they fought to preserve. Later, under the cover of night, Mara visited the memorial site where new names had been etched into the monument, an ever-growing testament to the bravery and sacrifice of her people. The soft glow of luminescent flowers, placed around the site, cast a gentle light on the names, each one a whisper in the quiet of the evening. Here, Mara allowed herself the grief she had held at bay, her fingers tracing the cold, hard letters of names she knew well. Her command had saved many, but not without cost. Each loss a deep ache in her heart, each name a promise to keep fighting. Captain Jensen, a voice called softly from the darkness. Mara turned to find Dr. Eliana Reyes approaching, her face somber yet hopeful. Eliana, Mara acknowledged, wiping her eyes discreetly. I just wanted to say. Eliana paused, her voice thick with emotion. Your leadership, it's what's keeping us together, what's keeping us fighting. You've done more than command, you've inspired. Mara shook her head gently, a mix of denial and acceptance. We do it together, Eliana. This is our home, and these are our people. We stand because we must. They shared a look of mutual respect and understanding, then turned back to the monument, letting the silence around them fill with the memory of the fallen. The next day dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the recent turmoil. In the command center, now bustling with plans for rebuilding and strengthening the colony, Mara addressed her crew and the colonists via the colony's communication network. Her speech was not just a briefing, but a rallying cry, a declaration of their resilience and commitment to thrive despite the odds. As long as we stand together, as long as we hold to our course, Mara concluded, her voice resolute, Cygnus Prime will not only endure, it will flourish. Cheers erupted from the listeners, a sound that carried far beyond the walls of the command center, into the heart of the colony, and out into the cosmos, a signal of human determination and spirit unbroken. As Mara stepped away from the podium, the weight of command on her shoulders felt a little lighter. They had won, for now, and would face whatever came next with the same unyielding resolve. This was their home, their haven among the stars, and they would defend it, always.